facts on 99.3 Info. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. On today's Big Hard Fact, which party is more prepared for the Edo State Guber Election? APC is choosing its candidate today. PDP is choosing theirs on Thursday. Let me say, in fact, the APC has chosen its candidate today, and PDP will choose theirs on Thursday. But the journey to this point has been very dramatic if you've been paying attention to the news. Lots of twists, lots of turns for both political parties. And it brings us to today's Big Hard Fact. Osagie Ize-Iyamu, the winner of today's APC gubernatorial primaries, was the PDP flag bearer 4 years ago. So Ize-Iyamu, the PDP's last candidate, is probably the APC's candidate this year. Not probably, he is the APC's candidate this year. And his opponent 4 years ago, Godwin Obaseki, has joined the PDP and may be their candidate this year. So we may end up with the same two candidates from 2016, but they've switched parties. Interesting times. Now, I wonder what you think about that. That's my first question. When you call us later on the show, tell us what you think about that. Some people have said that it's a reflection of our democracy. I wonder what you think. And we're going to look at how we got to this point. We're going to look at everything that made this switcheroo possible. And we have guests on the show to help us make sense of all of it. A legal practitioner is here. He's the former vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Monday Obani. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Monday.
Ezekwesili, thank you for having me. I'm not seeing you very clearly.
Okay, I wonder why. Someone's going to fix that problem. And then we also have on the show with us a politician and political commentator from Edo State, Osagie. Mr. Aneni, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Can you hear us? Okay, but we're not hearing you, though. Something's going on. I'm guessing they're going to fix that problem. Okay. All right, Lagos, we're also going to hear from you. Call us, send us your messages. Tell us which party you think is better prepared for this election. What do you think about the APC disqualifying Obaseki and him defecting to the PDP? What do you think about Ize-Iyamu, who was the PDP candidate 4 years ago, contesting for the APC ticket today? What about the suspension of Adams Yoshomole and the dispute over the APC national leadership? These questions, you're going to be sharing your thoughts on the show with me today. Let's start with Governor Obaseki. Mr. Obani, the APC screening committee disqualified him from contesting the primaries because, according to them, his certificates and other paperwork were irregular. But remember, he got the APC ticket 4 years ago, right? And back then, he went through the same screening process. Is it possible that the APC missed these problems in 2016? Or is it possible that the party knew that they existed but overlooked them for his sake? Mr. Obani.
Well, I cannot speak for APC, but as a political analyst, following up what has been playing out in Edo State, and it's quite dramatic, as you have rightly pointed out. If Obaseki was qualified 4 years ago to run, and he's still a governor of Edo State, and there was no issue with his certificate while he ran 4 years ago, one begins to wonder why is there issue now with his certificate. When the Constitution itself has even defined the qualifications that you need for you to be a governor. Today I analyze it for somebody that the Constitution even allows somebody with primary school certificate, first school living certificate. If you can produce it and show evidence that you have worked 10 years either in public or private sector, which is acceptable to INEC, you can speak and write English. And they probably take any course within 1 year period. And any other qualification that is acceptable to INEC without secondary school certificate. You can be a governor, you can be a president in Nigeria. That is section 318 1999 Constitution as amended. When you want to read alongside the section that actually provides for qualification for governor and that of the president. So with first school living certificate, you can be a president today under our 1999 Constitution. So this is a man that the University of Ibadan said that he's their graduate. but they are saying that he has no certificate anymore. Of course, it's about politics. There has been this issue of war going on between him and his godfather in the person of Adams Oshiomhole, who happens to be the national chairman or the former chairman of APC, because the court says he's no longer to act in that position presently until that is reversed either by the Supreme Court or there is a stay of execution of the decision of the Court of Appeal. For now, Adams Oshiomhole cannot in any way act as the chairman of APC. So what I'm trying to say is that this issue of his qualification and his paper is clearly a matter that is premeditated. It has nothing to do whether the man is actually qualified. It was an answer that was already provided for, through a question that was said that go and ensure that this man does not satisfy the requirement of being made a candidate of APC during this new election that is forthcoming.
Mr. Aneni, if indeed Obaseki didn't have the correct paperwork to be a party nominee, doesn't that mean that he also doesn't qualify to be governor? And then what does that say about the 4 years that he has spent in office, Mr. Aneni?
So first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, clearly.
Okay, fantastic. I think Vice Albani has laid out the issue of qualification quite clearly. The Constitution says as long as you can read or write, then you're fine. It was also an argument that the president put forward in his own defense during his own Supreme Court trial. Going to the sort of like building on that point a little bit more, it's saddening that we've gotten to this point in Edo State. Ize-Iyamu was with the PDP in 2016. I worked for his campaign. He's a fine gentleman. I will be sending him congratulations on winning the APC primaries after this conversation. But it sort of is disappointing that we are not having a conversation about Pastor Ize-Iyamu's manifesto. We're not having a conversation about the governor's 4 years and what he plans to do. It's just politics. You said that Pastor Ize-Iyamu is now the APC candidate, but even that is debatable. Okay. As we speak, there's a case challenging his competence to even take part in the primaries because an argument has been made that his waiver, as per the APC constitution, was not validly granted. It was given by the NWC instead of being approved by NEC. So there's a court case as we speak, challenging his competence. And it's saddening to me as a Democrat, as a party, we're happy. We have an amazing candidate potentially in Governor Obaseki. But we might find that, we become like a river state where it becomes a one-party election. If, for instance, Pastor Ize-Iyamu is disqualified, or like Zamfara, where we lost the election, but because of just internal party wrangling within the APC, even though we lost with almost 200,000 votes, the Supreme Court declared us the winner. And I don't see how that is good for our democracy. I don't see how that pushes our democracy forward. So that's what's really concerning to me.
I find it interesting that you say that as a party, we're glad to have Obaseki, but this is a man that the PDP criticized multiple times. Is all suddenly forgiven, or were those criticisms insincere?
So let me make this point, and hopefully I'll make it very clearly. The idea of political parties is that I believe that my party has a series of programs that if we execute, we will do it better than you. Okay. So take your Lagos State, for instance. I'm assuming maybe you swam to work today. I believe if the PDP was in power, we would sort out those problems. Okay. It's not that we would be perfect, but we believe that we would be better than the party in power. So I have in particular been very, very gracious and have commended this particular governor, Obaseki, in Benin because of the several things he has done, which sort of, in my mind, made him like a fish out of water in the APC and made me identify him as a candidate that would be perfect in the PDP, even before all of this started. For instance, he passed the Violence Against Persons Act a couple of years ago before it became popular to start talking about sexual violence against vulnerable people and women. He has invested in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, and these are programs that the PDP holds near and dear. If I was going to make any comparison, he's cut from the same cloth as maybe a Sheyi Makinde of the PDP. So we found, even though we were in different parties, we were always allies ideologically, I think.
Let me give you some examples. Let me give you some examples, Mr. Neni. In October of last year, the Edo PDP criticized Governor Obaseki for sacking 4 LGA chairmen. The PDP called it, quote, a rape of democracy, end quote. What does it say when a party will admit a man who they said raped democracy and give him a waiver to contest their primaries? Does the PDP no longer take the rape of democracy seriously?
I'm happy you brought up that particular point because I have, for instance, criticized Sheyi Makinde's dismissal of local government chairman in Oyo State, even though he's, to my mind, the best governor we have in Nigeria. But again, there are certain things that, regardless of party affiliation, you can either applaud or criticize. It doesn't mean because Obaseki sacked those chairmen, and because we criticized it, everything he has done is bad. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
I see. Barrister Bani, let me come to you with that same question. We've seen the PDP that criticized Obaseki several times 4 years ago, and it kind of looks like everything is forgiven. What do you make of that as a political commentator yourself?
Yeah, that is, of course, I want to start from the starting point that in Nigeria, politicians don't have any ideology. Political parties either also don't have any ideology. You can wake up in the morning and be a member of PDP, and in the afternoon, you can be a member of APC. Then in the night, you can be a member of ABGA in Nigeria. That's how politics is being played here. So issue of ideology is clearly out of the question. But to be specific with the answer you demand from me, what is the role of opposition actually? Is actually to criticize the political party that is in power and to offer what you call alternative, that we can do it better. Because if we don't do that, your supporters will be very angry with you if you don't have anything to fault the political party that is in power, which means you cannot present yourself in the next election. And so PDP has the right to be running down APC government, even if they are doing right, which is what he has actually told, my friend that is a co-guest in this particular program. He said, look, for the fact that I criticize somebody in one aspect does not mean everything he has done throughout his 4-year tenure that has actually shown some level of quality in governance, is all bad. No, it means that we are an opposition. So sometimes when somebody that is in power does anything that we consider not too good, we have a right to speak out so that people can see that we are playing that opposition. No, if you are even referring to what PDP, said about Obaseki, I hope I will refer you to what Oshomole said about where he called him a thief and armed robber.
We're going to get to that. Yes, we're going to get to that. No, yes. Now my point is, my point is, right? You have a situation where there was a violation of the Constitution. Should that not disqualify a governor, whether it's Makinde in PDP or Obaseki when he was in the APC? I mean, sacking local government chairman is a direct violation of the Constitution that a governor is sworn in to protect.
For which the parties can go to court. For which the parties who are actually sacked can go to court.
But violating the Constitution is an impeachable offense now.
I'm coming. If there is a violation of the Constitution by the governor in sacking local government chairman wrongly, they have a right to go to court. I did. With Ogun State governor that sacked some of the local government chairmen, their tenure had not expired, and they were sacked. I went to court, and when I went to court, they now reinstated them. They wrote them and they paid their salary up to date. Are you following me? So any person that any governor has actually violated his right by issue of sacking the local government chairman or councillors wrongly, you have a right of action. It can also be an impeachable offense, but if the House has not impeached the governor, for violating the Constitution, what is my own role as an opposition? I can't have such power to go and remove him. So that is actually what has happened. You can only criticize and bring it to the attention of the Edomites. And look, this man is a lawless man. So next time he comes to ask for your vote, don't give him any opportunity.
Yes, but should that man now be contending in your own political party? That's the question.
There's no ideology. I started with the word that there is no ideology in Nigerian politics. So
Osagie,
they have accepted him. He's a better candidate.
Osagie, I want to hear your thoughts. Osagie, let me hear from you.
Let me jump in. I think this assumption that as politicians we only chase power, we don't have any ideologies or any values is an incorrect one. It's easy to say and it's funny, but it's not true. You know, we hold certain things. I, for instance, personally, as I'm sure you know, Sandra, one of the most important things to me is freedom of speech. And it's why, for instance, you hear me always standing for the vice president, because I know it's also important to him, even though he belongs in another party. We have Marxists in politics, we have socialists, we have progressives in Nigerian politics. And you see these differences in our different states and even at the federal level. So it might be, I think maybe a more accurate statement would be that the parties maybe are still forming. We forget that this democracy is literally only 21 years old. Every time we've had a period of democracy, it has been aborted. And this is the longest stretch we've had. So this democracy is a 21-year-old child is literally just leaving his parents' homes, and it will find its identity, and you can actually see a sort of gravitation towards different sides now. The PDP represents a certain type of politician, a certain type of idea, and the APC less so. So,
what does the PDP represent? What does the PDP represent?
It's funny because I was listening to the APC chairman talking about progressive politics, and the APC represents progressive, and they don't. What we represent is progressive politics, is a market-led economy, even if we consider there's going to be a level of state intervention, almost in setting an environment for the market to lead the way. You know, so when we start having conversations like we are having now about public-private partnerships and the rest, those are PDP programs. The APC is more socialist. So, you know, let's tax the rich and share the money to everybody. It's a consumptive style of ideology. And it would be fine if our economy in itself was productive. But when we are not productive, we're literally like North Korea, and you are consuming the little we have. All you're doing is just taking everybody down into poverty. And that's what we've been seeing play out over the last 4 years. It's what we will see play out over the next 7.
Lagos, if you just joined us, hello. Welcome to Hard Facts. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. I have on the show with me today the former vice president of the Nigeria Bar Association, Monday Obani. I also have a politician and political commentator from Edo State, Osagie Ize-Iyamu. And we are talking about what's happening in Edo. They just chose, the APC that is, just chose Osagie Ize-Iyamu as the gubernatorial candidate for the elections in September. On Thursday, we're going to find out who the PDP will choose. Mr. Obani, you raised that point, so I'm going to come to you with that question. We had a similar situation 4 years ago with the APC, where Adams Oshomole said Ize-Iyamu couldn't be trusted with the state treasury, right? But today, he not only welcomed him into the party, Ize-Iyamu has also just won the primaries. So should situations like this happen without the party coming to the public to explain how somebody they called a thief or a danger to democracy is suddenly acceptable?
Anything can go in Nigeria. It's a country where anything goes. And that is the point, you know. And the people easily forget. But Google doesn't forget, you know. And that's why they are showing all these things that Oshomole said 4 years ago against Ize-Iyamu, and then let the people be in a position to judge where there is actually the power of the electorate. When you have openly called somebody a thief, just like Atiku also was called a thief by President Obasanjo, remember? And then he later retracted and was calling him now a saint. There is no way you can say things about somebody. All of a sudden, 4 years later, the man now suddenly becomes a saint, and whom you finally went to his own political party and dragged into yours. in order to run as your gubernatorial candidate. And meanwhile, you call this man that he cannot be trusted with state treasury. So what were you saying? Were you lying? So you were castigating that man, you were defaming his character. So you had no basis for what you were saying. Because if you really have morals, if you really have, conscience, if you really, were men of integrity, you cannot openly say something about a man like that. And then suddenly 4 years later, you're bringing him to come and run as a frontliner under your political party, a political party of change. No, it cannot happen except in Nigeria. So I think the electorate must, be in a position to make up their mind and either believe whether Ashomole was lying 4 years ago, that this man is a thief, but if they have actually forgotten or they are ready to forgive or he was joking, then let the electorate be in a position to make up their mind. But let me say this. In saying this, I'm not in any way praising PDP. My friend there was trying to talk good about it. They are the same. APC and PDP, they are the same. In fact, as I said earlier, it's just two sides of a coin. There is no difference between them. That's why when they are rejected here, they go over to the other, political party. If APC, has an ideology, I won't see somebody like that man coming over to an APC will accept. Also, if PDP have an ideology and they'll be criticizing Obaseki, I see no reason why under 1 second they have forgiven all they have said against him and they have granted an automatic waiver and all that. So what I'm saying is that APC and PDP today is becoming clearer to everyone, to any discerning mind, that these two political parties, just the same mother, the same father, and they are born the same day. There's no difference at all. So let nobody come and tell me about their own policy. It's a private, economy-driven political party. They are the same. 16 years or how many years they were in power. PDP messed up this country and messed up this country big time. Okay. And we cannot forget that. We cannot forget
Lagos,
that.
let's hear from you. How do you feel about Ize-Iyamu and Obaseki both switching parties within 4 years and coming back to contest again? What do you think about the same parties and leaders who once condemned each of these men, now welcoming them with open arms? What do you think about the points that my guests on the show today have made? 0700-993-993-993 0700-993-993-993. There's WhatsApp as well. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, yes, you can leave us comments and I'll take them live on the show. Hello.
Hello.
How are you, sir? What's your name?
Thank you very much. My name is Charles.
Charles, welcome to the show.
Yes, I'm from Edo State, Benin City.
Okay.
Yeah, both candidates have known their right for my youth age.
Okay.
Osagie Ize-Iyamu. During the time of Lucky Igbenedion, Ize-Iyamu was the SSG of Edo State. He was alleged as well under PDP. He was alleged as a thief too. So my own contribution is just that their personal interest is not fantastic to the people. You understand?
Okay.
Now, the both of them swapped party. Best of the same feather. They swapped party and come back again for the same gubernatorial election. And they are not making any good for the state. That is not a good reputation for my people.
Okay.
If not for their personal interest, one should stand where he is. Okay. Now, Ize-Iyamu switched from PDP to APC. Obaseki switched from APC to PDP. Is that a good record for them, for their personality and for the parties? Is that not political prostitution? And it's just a mess that I'm from that state, and the whole thing is just getting me upset.
Charles, I'm so sorry that you're upset, but thank you for calling me to share that with me. 99.3, how are you?
I'm fine. My name is Babaji.
Babaji, welcome.
The guest. I greet Barrister Albani. I greet you, sir, and the other guest there. The question you asked, which political party is fully prepared for the election? Am I right, Sandra?
Which one is more prepared?
More prepared. And if you ask me to predict Nigeria politics in an election is very difficult.
Okay.
Because 2015, I predicted, but the election overnight, when they postponed the election, even if you're a soothsayer, you cannot predict anything again. And what happened? Within 3 days, the country was locked down totally. And if you ask me, the federal mind, that word, they use it everywhere. I don't know whether the president, our president, because he has achieved whatever he wants to achieve, being military head of state, he has served, going to 8 years now as a civilian president, whether he's going to deploy security, because naturally the IG should be the one that will deploy the security, and the shifting of political parties should not use their influence to, corner some of the commissioners to do their bidding. If the election is going to be free and fair, without, federal might or whatever, I think I will be very, very happy. So if you are talking about more prepared, for me, I don't think any party is more prepared. And what Barrister Albani said, very profound. There's no difference. Anybody listening, if you think PDP is different from APC, APC is different from PDP, that is not true. Because like what you said, they are born of the same mother, the same father. They are born of the same day. You can just switch overnight. And at the end of the day, if you don't like what they are doing, you can come back again. So let's wait and see. Babaji, I will not predict what will happen. Anything can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babaji, for calling me. We're going to take a quick break, come back and continue this conversation because I want to talk about the primaries themselves, right? Governor Obaseki has issued an order restricting how primaries can be held due to COVID-19. The order says that any party primary with more than 20 people attending needs authorization from the governor and must be held in Benin in an arena that can hold 10,000 people. It also places a limit of 5,000 people in that arena. Now, the APC National is saying that this order is illegal. Now, they've already had the primary, so all of this is moot. All these points are moot at the moment. The APC National is saying that order was illegal and that only the president has the right to restrict gatherings during a pandemic. But we've seen other governors issue orders limiting gatherings. Here in Lagos, there are orders like that. In Kaduna, there's an order as well. River State as well. So many states, right? So, Monto Bani, when we come back from the break, I want you as a lawyer to tell me who's correct here, the national or the governor of the state himself, Obaseki. If you just joined us, hello, you're listening to Hard Facts. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. It's 5:30.
Hard Facts. We'll be right back. is a paid announcement.
Hey guys, Deals Plug here, and as usual, we have the best news in the market just for you. Now, with the outbreak of the coronavirus, aka COVID-19, late last year, and its subsequent rapid spread all over the world, a few concrete emotions have been evoked, including surprise, fear, uncertainty, and even anxiety. Now, these have been heightened even more by the slowly evolving understanding of the nature of the virus, especially its mode of transmission and specific actions taken to prevent infection. Now, in all these, the efforts and contributions of private sector initiative led by the Aliko Dangote Foundation and Access Bank is worthy of note, especially in the creation of CACOVID. CACOVID, which means the Coalition Against COVID-19, is a private sector initiative formed to combat and contain the COVID-19 pandemic scourge in Nigeria. In a bid to support national effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19, CACOVID has set up isolation centers in some states of Nigeria, namely Lagos, Kano, Rivers, Borno, Enugu, and of course the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Now, individuals also have roles to play in preventing the spread of the coronavirus. The first role you can play is to stay at home. The best preventive measure is to stay in your home during this period of spread. In that way, there will be no chance of contracting the virus from someone who is already infected. The second thing you can do to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus is to practice social distancing. If you must go out, ensure that you maintain some space of at least 2 meters from the next person standing close to you in any place outside your home, as this will limit your contact with infected people such that if they cough or sneeze, it will not get to you or infect you. And remember, personal hygiene, frequent washing of your hands with soap under running water for at least 20 seconds. This is especially so when you've had contact with surfaces, items in public spaces or transports, shops, offices, schools, anywhere basically. You must avoid touching your face, especially your nose, mouth, and eyes with your hands or hands not thoroughly washed as described. And just in case you have a cough or you feel the urge to sneeze, cover your mouth and your nose with a handkerchief or a tissue, or you can even dab when you cough, in essence using the inside of your elbow. The virus is mostly transmitted through droplets from someone that is infected, and this spreads faster when they cough or sneeze without covering their mouths and noses. But what can you do if you have indicative symptoms? If your temperature is high, or you have a fever, or you're coughing or sneezing, or maybe you have difficulty in breathing. First of all, stay at home, then isolate yourself from family and call the National Center for Disease Control, the NCDC, on the toll-free number 0800 9700 0010. That's 0800 9700 0010. Or you can also send them a WhatsApp message on 0708 711 0839. The number for the SMS is 0809 955 5577. You can also call 0703 670 8970 so that you can be attended to and be tested, or you call your doctor immediately to get guidance on what to do. Do not go to a hospital unless a doctor makes an appointment to see you. Doing so may make you infect other people if you already have the virus, or get infected by others since you may not have adequate protective equipment. When you are on appointment, always tell the doctors the truth. If you have a history of recent travel, or if you suspect that you might have exposed yourself to the virus in any way, this is to safeguard the community and other patients and caregivers from unknowingly contracting the virus and spreading it. Let us always appreciate the fact that at this critical time, the frontline doctors, nurses, and other caregivers also have families. We all need to be our brother's keeper by protecting them and ourselves. This message was brought to you by the Coalition Against COVID-19, CACOVID, a private sector initiative formed to combat and contain the COVID-19 pandemic scourge in Nigeria. CACOVID is led by two of Nigeria's leading organizations, Access Bank and the Dangote Foundation.
Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Hello, Lagos. Good evening to you. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili here with you on Hard Facts. We've got 23 minutes until the show ends. And on the show with me is a politician and political commentator from Edo State, Osagie Ize-Iyamu. We also have legal practitioner, former Vice President of the Nigeria Bar Association, Monday Ubani, on the show with us. And I shared today's big hard fact with you. Osagie Ize-Iyamu, the winner of today's APC gubernatorial primaries, was the PDP flag bearer 4 years ago. Mr. Anani says, well, now so politics they go. And Mondubani says, well, these politicians don't have an ideology. They are all parents. They're all children of the same parents. Now, before the break, Mr. Bani, I said I was going to talk about the primaries themselves. So Governor Basaki issued an order restricting how primaries can be held. And he says that any party with more than 20 people attending needs authorization from the governor. Any party primary with more than 20 people attending needs authorization from the governor and must be held in Benin in an arena that can hold 10,000 people. It also places a limit of 5,000 people in that arena. Now, the ABC National itself is saying that order is illegal, that only the president has the right to restrict gatherings in a pandemic, during a pandemic. Now, I gave the example of other governors who have issued orders as far as gatherings are concerned, limiting gatherings. You have Lagos, you have Kaduna, you've got Rivers, so many states. So as a lawyer, who is correct here, the national or Governor Basaki?
Well, the Quarantine Act gives concurrent power to both the president and the government. Now, if in any area concerning this pandemic that has just occurred and is still ongoing, if the president makes any law, which of course is done by the National Assembly, the state governors will not have any power to make any law with regards to that. But the problem here is that the president has not enacted any law whatsoever. What we had the president do is to actually impose some level of restriction on some certain states, Lagos, Ogun State, Abuja, and I think Kano at a time. And at the time also lifted it. So there has not been any enactment, by the National Assembly with regards to this particular pandemic, except the bill that is clearly now under consideration. There has been no any law enacted. But we saw that the states all over the federation took charge of what were happening in their various states. And we, of course, those states you cited, the rivers, even in Lagos here, and even the presidential task force that was actually in charge of the pandemic, across over the federation, gave the governors also the power to go ahead and make certain arrangements with regards to their internal things, concerning the pandemic. And so if state governors have enacted any legislation, with regards to the number of persons required at any point in time in their various states, so it would be wrong in the absence of any federal law to say that the state governor does not have such power. Because it's only when the federal government has enacted any law that the state cannot, because that would be a conflict. The other law, the higher law will supersede. But in the absence of any express law that the federal government has not enacted, with regards to this quarantine, it is the state governors that have actually been taking charge of the pandemic, restricting movements, even though most of us have also argued whether such powers is even allowed under the Quarantine Act, whether the governors have the right to restrict movement, contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. But what we know is that it is the governors who have been doing this. And so it is now very, very convenient for our brothers now to now say that the governor does not have any power anymore because it affects them now and all that. But the point is that it is the governors who have been doing this all over the federation. And we must be factual about it. We'll all follow up and see what the governors have been doing all over the federation in terms of this pandemic, how they've been handling it and enacting law, gathering concerning movement and even gathering. Lagos State said you cannot gather more than at a time, and somebody held a party, and the person was convicted. Are you following me? In Lagos, another, had to write a letter of apology before they were forgiven. It wasn't federal government that came to prosecute those people that offended the law. So we must be factual about it. I'm only expressing my opinion objectively as possible as a lawyer because I know what is going on presently. The federal government has no law on issue of restriction of movement with regards to the pandemic.
Can I quickly jump in?
Yes.
I have a slightly different take. As a politician, maybe that's why my perspective is different. The president did eventually enact or call upon the Quarantine Act And it's instructive because the administration of quarantines is actually on the exclusive list. And what the president did say when he issued his regulations concerning this particular pandemic was, I'm going to restrict movement in XYZ states, but I'm also going to allow the governors make regulations as they deem fit. So that was included in the text of the regulations the president himself issued. And the argument made is that empowered, even aside from the Quarantine Act that says there's a vacuum, governors can act, even aside from the fact that state governments can pass laws through their state houses of assembly, that empowered the state governors to act, hiding under the cover or an authority of the president. And it's just one more hurdle that the APC, or one more pit the APC has fallen into. So the primaries held today, there were supposed to be 3 candidates. I think 2 of them stepped down just before the primaries. And so Pastor Ize-Iyamu ran almost unelected. But he was holding it under the background of, for want of a better word, an illegally convened primary. So all anybody needs to do right now really is just go to court to say that they are disputing the outcome of the election because there was a subsisting gazetted law issued by the state government saying they shouldn't gather in more than 20 people, take a picture showing 20 people or more, and a court can rule the primaries as illegally held. And it's, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning of this thing. I want to see a contest of ideas. I want a governor to be able to come out and say, I've done 4 years. This is what you should rule me on. And not these tactics, these sly political tactics we seem to be engaging ourselves in. So that's my perspective. It's just one more hurdle that the APC has put itself in front of itself. And I predict we will end up with, just like we have in Rivers, we'll end up with a one-party state where PDP is the only actual party in power in Edo State.
Now, the matter of the courts brings up another issue that Barrister Bani alluded to earlier on in this conversation. We have the Gyadom versus Etta affair. Ajimobi is the acting national chairman, but he's ill. Now, Victor Gyadom has declared himself the rightful replacement, while the NWC is backing Hilliard Etta. The NWC says Gyadom resigned his official position in 2019 to contest for deputy governor in Rivers State. But Gyadom says he didn't resign. He says he got a special waiver from the party chairman, Oshiomhole. Barrister Bani, what do you think about this tussle?
Yeah, I need to correct this issue of exclusivity of the Quarantine Act. My brother my political brother, also mentioned that the governors can enact a law, subsidiary legislation on the Quarantine Act. If the governors can enact a law on the Quarantine Act, then it cannot be said to be exclusive. If it's exclusive, it's only the federal government the president that can enact a law concerning a particular act. If the governor can and the president can, then that means that law is not said to be exclusive. That means that the governors can also enact a law. But as I said earlier, if both of them can, when the president does enact, it covers the field. The governor has no right whatsoever to enact any other law concerning that particular area the president has covered. But since the governors have a right to, and that's why most of them were making all those pronouncements and also enacting some state laws concerning the pandemic, because the Quarantine Act also gives the governors powers to enact laws in their state concerning the issue. So that is one thing I want to correct. So the governors can enact a law based upon the Quarantine Act, just as the president can. But when the president does, the governors cannot on the same issue, because whatever the federal government has done has covered the field. Now, on the question you have asked about what is actually playing out in APC, there are what you call legal landmines, on whoever is emerging as a candidate of APC or who has emerged. The position of the law, and which I have said it several times on every forum that I have been invited upon, is that the person today that I know is the acting chairman of APC is Chief Victor Gyadom. Because that is a candidate that the court recognized. As at the time that Oshiomhole was restrained from acting as a chairman of APC by the FCT High Court, the highest ranking officer of the National Working Committee of APC was Giadom. Giadom was the acting national secretary at that time. And if you look at the constitution of APC, he ranks the officers. He was the highest. The deputy chairman of APC have not been appointed. It was later he was appointed. I'm talking about Ajimobi. The same thing with other officers. It was later. Now, about the resignation of Giadom resigned to run as a deputy gubernatorial candidate in Rivers. But when he could not make it, he came back. And then he was given a letter by the same APC, by the same Oshomole. And then he became and was even promoted as the acting national secretary. So after resigning and he came back and you accepted him, and you have held him out to be the acting national secretary, you cannot deny him that you are stopped by law from now saying that he has resigned, because you have accepted him back when he came back and even placed him in a position of the acting national secretary. So as at the time he went to court to validate his acting chairmanship of APC, he was the highest ranking national working officer of the party. Now that order was never set aside, because the law, the High Court rules of Abuja gives any party who has an order against him right to bring an application to set it aside. That order was never set aside. The man was validated as the acting national secretary of APC. But the unfortunate thing was that the same day was when Oshomole got a temporary relief from the appeal court for stay of execution against that order restraining him. So that man's power to act now was put in abeyance. Immediately, the Court of Appeal removed Oshomole recently, validating the order of the lower court. The man went to court, and that order was renewed for another 2 weeks. And nobody has set aside that order. Nobody has gone on appeal against that order. So if that order is a valid court order that has not been set aside, either reversed or vacated by the same court, you cannot now say that he has been sacked, by some people in Rivers State now who just woke up and say he has been dismissed.
But you also have the court. You also have the court giving conflicting orders. One court is calling Giadom acting chairman. Another court has ordered him to stop parading himself as acting chairman until they give a judgment.
That order cannot act as the court was not sitting on appellate jurisdiction, because that is a court of coordinate jurisdiction. And of course, that matter was not brought before you, that this man has already been validated. And so he's now sitting on appeal. You just made an order, and that order cannot set aside an existing order, because they are court of the same of coordinate jurisdiction. Are you following me? I'm talking about the one from Port Harcourt. So the position of the law as I speak to you today, the only person that I know that the law has recognized as the acting chairman of APC, Chief Victor, in the absence of any invalidating order by a higher court or by a court of the same jurisdiction, saying, because the other one say he cannot act, not that he has set aside the order given by the court in Abuja. Remember what the order say, he cannot act. He didn't set aside the order given. So as long as that order has not been set aside by any order of the court of the same jurisdiction or by a higher court, the person that I know today that is the acting chairman is a landmark. These people have set themselves landmark, and then many other issues. Who is the chairman? Who is the chairman that conducted that primary today? Is it Oshomole? Because I heard that Oshomole even voted as a candidate, as a voter. Is he voting as a chairman of the political party? Is he voting as a member of the political party when he has been suspended by his people? And that suspension order has been validated by the court, because it was based upon that suspension that the court now says he cannot act as the chairperson. And that order is still subsisting and has not been set aside. So his membership is an issue. He's suspended as a member. His chairmanship is also an issue. He has been suspended from acting as the chairperson. Those two orders have not been set aside, because all the attempt he did with Court of Appeal on the issue of jurisdiction, the court refused to hear him on jurisdiction. On the issue of fair hearing, the court dismissed his grounds of appeal, that those two issues lack merit. And that's how it is now. Unless he has an order from the Supreme Court staying the execution of the Court of Appeal, or that order is reversed by the Supreme Court on substantive matter, he remains suspended as acting chairperson, as the chairman of APC. He also remains suspended as a member of APC, because that order has been validated by the court, even if there are subsequent attempts to now say they have lifted. When you have lifted, have you lifted the order of the court? The order of the court is still there. You now say you have lifted the suspension. Have you gone to court to go and report that you have lifted his suspension? Because the court has validated that suspension. And it was based upon that suspension that the court now say he cannot act as the chairman of APC.
Mr. Aneni, what is the root cause of all this turmoil in Edo State? Why has the political situation become so turbulent?
It's one word. It's just ego. I think it's if I was going to describe it, and it's just the ego of one man. It's the ego of Oshomole. I'm speaking candidly, because of the way Obaseki had performed. We, as a political party at the PDP, I rated our chances in the election not very highly, and then you just gift us, an amazing performing governor.
He wasn't amazing performing 4 years ago. When you were criticizing him, when he was about to come into office.
Again, I'm happy you brought that up. Politics it never occurs in a vacuum. So, as a candidate or as an individual, Obaseki has a stellar record in the private sector. He's a finance guru. He had made his wealth outside of politics. But the problem he had in 2016 is the same problem Pastor Ize-Iyamu, another fine gentleman, is having in 2020. They were working under the shadow of Oshomole, who, as we've seen, is not the most democratic of people, and was looking to almost recreate the dynasty you guys are suffering under in Lagos. And that is what we stood against in 2016, and that's what we are standing against now in 2020. So it's not. I don't want. It's a bit simplistic.
It still doesn't take away from the fact that he did certain things as governor that went against the constitution. Now I know that Mr. Barisobani says, well, nobody challenged it in court, and his house did not deem it an impeachable offense, and so he wasn't impeached. But he still did something that the PDP found deplorable at the time. Why is that sin suddenly forgiven?
Who says it is, Sandra? It's not.
He's been given a waiver to run as your flag bearer.
I'm saying, for instance, we have PDP governors who are jailing your fellow journalists. It's not forgiven. It's not ignored. But it doesn't mean that they are, as a party or as governors, they are completely bad. I'm saying you can call out wrong, but also encourage or applaud right.
It sounds to me like we just care about who wins. That's it.
We actually should. It's a very important thing. We actually should. I've made this point several times on this show and I've told my fellow PDP members, they've been accusing me of anti-party activities. I had said if Obaseki remained in APC, I was going to work on his campaign. I said it privately, I said it publicly, I'm saying it on the show. That was my position. Because it mattered to me that we elected a governor who was progressive, whose policies would move the state forward. I don't think it's fair to color his entire government on just one thing, because that's not all he has done. He has done several things. I don't think we have the time out to run through them.
No, we don't.
But similarly, I don't. Again, just to show that it's not black and white, I'm not going to come on here and say Pastor Ize-Iyamu is a bad person, because I don't think he is. Again, I think he's a fine gentleman. The problem the APC had in 2016 is the problem they are having in 2020 is that one man wants to control and dictate the fate of the state. And people might not like it, but Edo is not Lagos.
Okay, Lagos. That's where we wrap up the conversation today. Mondebani, thank you so much for your time, as well as you, Mr. Osagie Aneni.
It's my first time out seeing a lovely face. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the show. Lagos, we're going to have this conversation tomorrow with Chris Finebone. Chris Finebone is an APC chieftain in River State. He'll be joining us at 5 p.m. So join us as well if you want to hear more about this situation with the party chairmanship, the Edo State brouhaha, to borrow the words of a caller who called me on today's Big Three. I'll bring you the news at 6 and then we'll wrap up the show. Don't go away.
Hard Facts will be right back.